Hey, y'all, this is Mike with Ink and Audible. I am back with my full review of Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. It's actually categorized as sci-fi, but it feels a lot like fiction. It's actually a nice blend because she's taking you into the future and giving you, a real look at a real perspective on robots and where things could go from, I know from a perspective that I didn't expect when I picked up the book, but it just has that really good, sort of descriptive fiction feel. It's some of the best written sci-fi I've read in a while. The story itself centers around a woman named Zelu. And when we pick up with the story initially, I think Zelu is 32. And I mentioned this, Zelu has a disability. She's paraplegic from a tragic accident that happened when she was 12. But though that plays into the story, is not the story itself, or it's not, uh, the way the character is written is so, I guess, well drawn that it is part of her, but it's not you just don't think about it, even though there's many pieces of the story that come back to it. So where we pick up initially is Zelu spending about a year living at home, and she goes on to write what becomes a celebrated fiction novel or sci-fi novel called Rusted Robots. But what we watch and what Death of an Author actually allows us to see is this sort of what happens when fame happens and you go from obscurity to all of a sudden you're worldwide and you're celebrated in all corners everywhere for this phenomenal piece of work that you've put together that just came from the soul, just came out, and now your life just changes. And what we watch in many ways is how fame comes with the price of people trying to almost redefine you and determine who you are and what's acceptable for you to do and not acceptable for you to do in many ways. At least that's sort of the way I took it. So the book comes, and again, she skyrockets to fame. I mean, the moment she sends it to her agent, the agent feels like she's created something phenomenal, and before you know it, she's got a seven figure book deal. She's optioning film rights. She's being interviewed all over the press, and just it just takes off like lightning. um at first, the it, of course, she can't believe it. Her good fortune leads to just her doing and living in ways that she probably never even believed. But it comes back to initially telling her family, who has, in many ways, because Zalo has this disability, has sort of um, subscribed or prescribed a place in the family for her, and where she's supposed to be and what she's supposed to do. And this essentially challenges everything in every way that they've tried to define her, in the place that they've tried to give her in the family. And of course, they're happy for her, and they're not doing it in a I don't know, a mean sense, or in a sense of trying to dominate her, but they've been so used to being protective of her, that they don't know how to sort of let that protection and that let her start to sort of go in the direction that she goes. But early on, she makes a dramatic choice. With her success, there's a gentleman who approaches her, who's like almost like an engineer, who offers her the chance to get these robotic exoskeleton legs that'll give her the ability to get up and get back on her feet for the first time in literally 20 years, because this accident that happened to her happened when she was 12. And that just changes literally everything about her life. But it it makes it hard for everybody to relate to who she was and the place they'd given her and who she is now in the life that she begins to try to lead at that point. It's just there's a lot of friction there. There's a moment in the book where she ends up doing an interview on a show, a well-known show, where the host actually asks her a question, and the question is geared to almost make her feel guilty about the choice she's made in terms of getting these robotic legs, because the host has decided or is intrigued to ask her, doesn't she feel like she has to, represent those who are disabled or in her position a certain way? And she feels, Zelu feels almost like, I don't know, um, uh, not attacked, but sort of attacked in the way that the host goes about asking this question. And it just continues this pattern of deciding who she is and what she should be. She experiences a lot of those same things with social media and the comments that are going on with social media. And as the book hype continues to grow and her popularity continues to grow and fan bases start to form around the book, and it's like the death of the author becomes the people around her almost trying to define who she is and what she's about in a way that she just simply won't allow. Um, the book that she writes, and we get we get a book within a book. So her book is actually um, fed out almost like every 3 or 4 chapters. Rusted Robots is presented to us, and it's equally interesting in the way that they presented it. That she takes us forward into this world where robots have become, they're almost like at the start of their civilization. But we begin with the last, what do we call the last living human on the planet, a woman named Ngozi, a black Igbo woman who these two robots encounter, one being almost a form of AI called Nobodies. And that form of AI is embedded into another robot that's actually sort of like a human in terms of the way they move and go around the world. And we go, and that part of the book unfolds. She actually shows us how, and makes us imagine a world where robots actually start to experience and live out some of the very same mistakes that she tells us at different points of the story that humans made that led to their decline in terms of, she's envisioning a world that we know ending due to climate change. So I never got a clear sense of how far in the future we are, but we're just at this point where, robots have taken over the world. There's this one human left who's also, whose first mission is to help these two robots who have been intertwined, who have totally different perspectives, come separate themselves. So she spends a tremendous amount of time with them working on trying to do that before she finally succeeds. But what happens at a certain point is Ngozi dies. And when she dies, she leaves an imprint on both of these robots that carries on into the future. And there's even a sort of a storyline around the art of storytelling and how she would tell them stories while she was alive, and the way that they sort of honor her when she's gone is incredible. When I read it, it kind of, I don't know, there's parts of it that made me think about, the story of Adam and Eve, and how, it's been not supposed, but that, Eve was a black woman. So it's, at least that's been talked about. And, there's always been sort of the belief that the history of mankind began in Africa. So what we're seeing is almost this stepping forward where, mankind ends, and the last living person is a Nigerian woman who leaves an imprint on the robots that are actually going to carry forward and in a way bring that, bring humanity and pieces of humanity into the robot world that carry forward. It's really well done. It definitely gets you thinking on, a lot of levels about how, in some ways, the stories you see today about how, all of our, all of our written and, whether books, music, content itself is being, sort of ingested by AI, and how that actually, will shape the way, in many ways, the way robots think. And you kind of see that manifest in the way the story is driven. Um, I, there's so many areas that I could get into, but I don't want to give too much away, because I think this is definitely a read for, those who love sci-fi, but those who love fiction and imagining what the world could be. If you and I haven't actually, read a story or seen a character like Zelu, who, a lead character who has a disability but has a, um, how they talk about the idea of, people who have a thirst for life, and living life like Zelu has a real thirst for life, thirst for adventure, and is willing to take on whatever and try whatever, and goes with her, her heart, her emotion, and what she dreams of doing, and challenge things and take on challenges. So that, I think, comes across in the story. As I read the book, the one thing that I remember is, throughout the book, there's sort of interviews that occur with different members of Zelu's family, and her, her significant other. And I want to say his name is Misizu. I could be pronouncing that wrong. You have to forgive me if I am. He's South African, and we get to see these various interviews at different times, with everybody giving a different take of who Zelu is, and how they've related to Zelu, and what they thought about her, depending on what point in time that they're talking to the person, or what they're bringing up. Um, that's the one part where I'm not sure that those interviews gave me more than just watching her as a character live her life and do as she does throughout the story. And then, and of course, that piece of the story has no connection to, those interviews had no connection to the Rusted Robots, which is sort of, like I said, the book within the book. I um, I would definitely recommend this as a read for sure. I have, I've known of this author for a while. This is the first thing I've picked up, and she's definitely converted me into an actual, fan of her work. I'm looking forward to, going back to read some of the other books she's written in the past. She has a well-known series called, I think it's Benti, that I may go back to read that series, and then, of course, paying close attention to the things that she's going to bring us from here on out. It's Nnedi Okorafor. Definitely worth reading the book. Go check out Death of the Author. Definitely glad that I picked it up. This is Mike when Ink and Audible. Stay with me. Can't wait to come at you with the next review. Peace.